702.
The Naked Scientist.
Time for The Naked Scientist with Dr. Chris Smith, 011-883-0702, the WhatsApp line 0727021702. Dr. Chris Smith, in our Parenting and Parents feature, we were talking about the siblings that are raised in a home where one of the children has serious medical conditions. So we're talking cancer, we're talking, it could be mental, but something that diverts all the attention to the other kids. Are there any studies you have read of that speak to the impact of being the other child in the home? We already got examples from listeners, the one saying another child was going to be conceived for a child that urgently needed stem cells, so they needed that umbilical cord. And another listener saying they were in a home where a 16-year-old was unwell and the 12-year-old was also a caregiver.
It's a really good question. I don't know of the evidence base because I've never been asked that or really delved into it. But common sense and a little bit of personal experience says that yes, there almost certainly is a huge impact potentially if you let there be one. I'm aware of a person who had a brother who needed a lot of hospital care growing up because of a brain problem, and the older child had to spend a lot of time with grandma. They had an excellent relationship with grandma, and if you look at how that person turned out, they've actually done extremely well in their life. And so they would argue that, in fact, it brought them a bit more wisdom, experience, tolerance perhaps, close family ties. So it certainly didn't harm them. But at the time, I know that it was very stressful for the person's mother and father, and also for them themselves, worrying about their brother. But the long-term evidence is in that one, you've got to be really careful about drawing examples from just one example, but in the long term everything worked out fine. And so it has the potential, I think, to be extremely traumatic, extremely disruptive, but only if you let it, and with appropriate planning, and I think with appropriate conversations and support and having a chat to children. They're not stupid. I mean, they can take these things on board and they can understand that there are going to be times when times are a bit tough and mummy and daddy might have to be away a bit, or they might not spend as much time doing the things they love. I think they can understand that, and perhaps they can get some good things coming out of it, not just bad things.
And I love that you are just saying that part, because we often underestimate what children know and what they understand.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And they're very perceptive. And while you may think you're hoodwinking them and pulling the wool, they are, just like pets, I think, really sensitive to your change in your affect, the way you carry yourselves, the sorts of words you use, the mood you're in. They're going to pick up on those vibes. And even if they don't know the precise reasons, they're going to know something's off. And if you coast along pretending nothing is wrong, and that they know they're being fooled, they know they're being deceived, and that actually, I think, makes it worse, and they're less able to cope in the long run, and that will have a bad outcome. I think being frank to the point where within the realms that they have the ability to comprehend can be really helpful.
Indeed, that is the case. Thank you so much, Dr. Chris Smith. A message from Chad, a question. How bad are processed foods for us really? And how badly have companies lied to the public about this? Oh, I'm so excited for this question, Doctor. There's some man that I started following on TikTok who starts to share quite a bit of information. And one of the things that I saw him say recently was like Pringles, for example, and I'm specifically speaking to the US, so not necessarily referring to here, had not enough potato for it to even be called potato chips.
Well, one just has to step back from the question for a moment and look at World Health. And there are 8.5 billion people or thereabouts alive on Earth at the moment, the biggest population we've ever had. But it's also the biggest population we've ever had. As in, if you look at disease rates from obesity, they're skyrocketing. Where we used to have malnutrition, meaning famine and starvation, we now have malnutrition, meaning often overweight and eating all the wrong things. And this is happening all over the world. And in Western countries, they're leading the charge, but in poorer countries, they're catching up. And the number of people who will therefore fall victim to consequences of obesity is huge because it's the biggest risk factor for so many different health conditions, not least diabetes. And diabetes lies upstream of a vast panoply of different medical conditions and is one that we are sleepwalking into, this pandemic of diabesity at the moment. So then you ask the question, well, we haven't changed genetically in the last 50 years, during which time this dramatic turnaround has happened. So what does explain it? Well, the only thing that therefore can explain it is the environment that we're living in and the activities that we're doing and the way we're living our lives. So what has changed? Well, what has changed is that we are tending to resort to more food, more processed food, and less activity. And when you bring all this together, you get this toxic combination. And processed food is designed to be convenient, it's designed to be tasty, it's designed to be accessible and minimise the effort of you extracting calories from it. So in other words, these things are really moreish. They make you dip back into the packet time and time again for more of the same. And we end up grossly overeating because we're seduced by these wonderfully tasty snacks that are really easy to get your hands on. You don't have to even stand up to dip your hand into the crisp bag and pop another one in. And if you finish one, well, why not have another? And this is the problem we're now in, where we've made food so readily available and pre-packaged food that is designed to make us really want to eat it. It tastes good. It plugs into all of our visceral senses that we, over millions of years of evolution, have honed in order to find foods that are rich in calories, because when we were evolving, we didn't know where our next meal was coming from. In this day and age, it's all on tap, but we're still running the same genetic programs that make us extremely susceptible to being seduced in this way. So really, we are going to have to take a very close look at this, because it is translating into gross population ill health all over the world, and it is the worst pandemic we probably ever confronted. We thought COVID was bad. We think things like flu and HIV are bad. Well, actually, if you look at how many people are going to fall victim to this pandemic of diabesity, is enormous, and it's going to make those aforementioned look like a walk in the park, really, in terms of the long-term health consequences.
I see some of your questions coming through. 011 883 0702. The WhatsApp line 072 702 1702.
702.
The Naked Scientist.
10 minutes to 3 o'clock. We continue with the Naked Scientist with Dr. Chris Smith. 011 883 0702 and the WhatsApp line 072 702 1702. We've got a voice note.
Hi, Dr. Chris. It's Victor here in Johannesburg. I just want to find out what happens before a thought. Before we can think of something, is there a pre-thought? What exactly kickstarts the process that results in a thought? Thank you.
Interesting. Dr. Chris?
What a wonderful question. And the answer is that our brains are a huge assemblage of nerve cells. There's about 100 billion of them in the average adult human brain, and 10 times to 20 times that many other cells that do supporting roles. They're sort of like you've got 100 billion presenters, and you've got about 20 times as many producers running around helping to make sure everything actually works. And those don't just work in isolation, those brain cells. They're networked. Each brain cell is connected to between 5 and 20,000 other brain cells through thread-like connections which can be strengthened or weakened. And so when one brain cell becomes active, it tells other brain cells that they should become active as well. And when another brain cell becomes less active, it tells other brain cells to become less active. And because these circuits can be tuned, the brain doesn't work in terms of just individual nerve cells. It works in terms of pools or populations of cells which turn on and throb or pulse activity. And different regions of the brain are specialised for doing different things, but pretty much every part of the brain is connected more strongly or more weakly to every other part of the brain. So when you're in an environment, say you're walking down the street, you're being cued visually by everything that's flowing into your eyes. The cars, the colours of the cars, the sounds, the smells, the other people walking around, the birds flying overhead. All those things are activating different pools of nerve cells, and in certain circumstances there will be a sufficiently big activation to get your attention, because there's so much information flowing into the brain that we would die by overstimulation if we tried to process all of it. So the brain tends to focus on things a bit like you have a spotlight shining on the actor on a stage. And the stage is still there, the scene is set, the scenery is there, the other actors are on the stage, but your attention is spotlighted by that leading role, that person who's talking right at that second. And it's very similar with the way that the brain is processing information. This is all streaming in, lots of things are being cued and activated, but something will reach a threshold and make a certain population of nerve cells produce activity at a level that then gets your attention. And the motivational and attentional parts of the brain then switch the focus of that cognitive spotlight onto that particular population of nerve cells, the activity they're producing. And this is probably the essence of a thought. When something reminds you of something, it's because you've cued a group of nerve cells sufficiently hard that the networks that they're connected to are then kicked sufficiently hard to then produce information, which then reaches your attention if that cueing is sufficiently strong. And that cueing can come from within. If you think, I now want to think about a subject, you're basically telling nerve cells in your brain that are in networks connected to that particular thing you want to think about to become more active. And they then begin to produce patterns of activity that in some cases are sufficiently strong that they're going to bubble up and you're going to drag your attention over to what they are saying to you internally. This is all speculation, of course, because we don't actually know how consciousness works. And what we're being asked here is, well, how does consciousness work? How do you think of things? How do you become aware of thoughts? What we're doing is inferring how we think it all works based on what people tell us as human beings and some experiments that we can do and brain scans that show the brain is compartmentalized with different things doing different jobs and specialized for different jobs, but all connected to each other, all talking to each other, and the pattern of connectivity, stronger or weaker in some circumstances, being the driver as to how good you are at linking one thing to another.
All right. We have so many interesting questions. I'm going to go with this one next, which says, Dr. Chris, how does one mother give birth to twins of different fathers?
Right. Well, we actually documented our first case of this in the UK recently. And the answer is quite simple, which is that when a woman ovulates, that means the ovary, you have two of those, one on either side of the pelvis, produces an egg. This goes down the fallopian tube or oviduct, and at the top third of that oviduct, if the woman has had sex, then sperm from the man will have swum up there and it will meet the egg and can fertilise it. Well, there's no rule that says a woman can't release more than one egg at once, and sometimes more than one egg comes down, and if there's sperm there and two eggs come down, those two eggs can independently be fertilised and they can then float down the oviduct into the uterus, implant, and you have a baby. Now, if a woman has had sex with more than one man, the sperm doesn't sort of fight it out and say, I was here first, you're not allowed in. Although in some animals it does, but in humans it doesn't. It all mixes together. So you have a mixed population of sperm sitting there. And if you're lucky, unlucky, depending upon how you look at it, then if there are two eggs and there's a mixed population of sperm, you can sometimes get one sperm will go in from one dad and fertilise an egg, and you have a child with one dad. And the other egg that comes in happens to get fertilised by a sperm from the other dad, and you get a child. They're half brothers or sisters because they've two different dads, same mum, because the mum supplied the eggs, but the dad supplied the sperm, and there were two of them.
Sure. Science is very fascinating and interesting. Unfortunately, we don't have time for you to answer another question, Dr. Chris Smith, but do not worry. We keep all of your questions with us, including energy drinks and things about mist and tornadoes and hurricanes. We'll see them next week.